In Isaac Asimov's book, The Sun Shines Bright, a lesser-known collection of short essays, the opening essay centers around an interesting coincidence in history, the apparent correlation between the longest recorded sunspot minimum and the longest reign of a monarch in history, King Louis XIV, Roi Soleil, the Sun King. In summary, sunspots are dark spots that appear on the sun's surface, cold patches that move around and disappear and reappear. There are periods when there are very few sunspots, or none at all, and the longest period in history in which this has occurred is called the Maunder Minimum, which lasted from 1645 to 1715. Sunspots affect many things on Earth. Here are a few examples from the book. Now it happens that when the sun is magnetically active, its magnetic field bellies so far outward that the Earth itself is enveloped by it. The field serves to deflect some of the cosmic rays so that less carbon-14 is formed and deposited in plant tissues. When the sun's magnetic field shrinks at the time of sunspot minima, the Earth is not protected, so that more cosmic rays strike and more carbon-14 is formed and deposited. In short, plant tissues formed in years of sunspot minima are unusually high in carbon-14, while plant tissues formed in years of sunspot maxima are unusually low in carbon-14. Here is another excerpt from another part in the essay. At this time, the Scottish-German astronomer Johann von Lament was measuring the intensity of the Earth's magnetic field and had found that it was rising and falling in regular fashion. In 1852, a British physicist, Edward Sabine, pointed out that the intensity of the Earth's magnetic field was rising and falling in time with the sunspot cycle. Here is a final excerpt from the same essay. Changes in the intensity of the solar wind affected the incidence of auroras on Earth and of electrical storms, and probably alter the number and nature of the ionic seeds in the atmosphere about which raindrops can form. In that way, the weather can be affected by the sunspot cycle, and, in consequence, the incidence of drought, of famine, of political unrest might all be related to the sunspot cycle by enthusiasts. That's the end of quotation. Now, as it happens, around the same time as the Maunder Minimum, there was a king called Louis XIV. You may have heard of him. He invented the necktie. He reigned from 1643 to 1715, the longest reign of any king in history. He called himself Roi Soleil, aka the Sun King. This was long before anyone knew a damn thing about sunspots. Asimov frames this as a coincidence and nothing more. It is the introduction essay to this particular book, and he obviously places some significance on it. What one can make of this is beyond you or me, and I think that this is the point. One may speculate that people at the time somehow noticed that the sun was brighter, and it came up so often in conversation that he overheard it one day and decided to make it his moniker. On the other hand, one could speculate that there is some divine link between heavenly bodies and human affairs. A new concept, I'm sure. On the third and final hand, one could just put it down to chance. God is just messing with us. I just think it's sad that you can't really find anything about this coincidence online, so I was hoping that by writing about it here, it may live on in perpetuity. The Sun Shines Bright is not his most popular or riveting read. For those of you who may be wondering how they knew about the Maunder Minimum centuries before the discovery of sunspots, Due to the phenomenon of carbon-14 forming during sunspot minimums, we can trace the history of sunspots by analyzing the rings of a tree trunk. So what I just read was an essay that I posted to the Isaac Asimov subreddit many years ago, I think about 3 years ago. I'm just going to add a few more facts. Louis the 14th was also compared to Apollo, the Greek god of the sun. I know that it's a contentious issue to say that King Louis was the longest reigning monarch in history, and there have been other reported monarchs living longer. The thing is that there's much more evidence for Louis than there is for the other ones, some of which lived well beyond the lifespan of the average human. So that's that. I don't actually know much about history besides what I read in this book and basic self-education, which isn't much. But I have corroborated this evidence in several places, and it seems to check out. What I like about this coincidence is that it suggests that there is a lot more to life than we currently know or that we can ever know. Good science fiction writers can create strange realities, alternate realities, because they understand how strange our own reality is. Isaac Asimov was a genius, and he drops this particular fact like a bomb at the beginning of the book. The rest of the book is actually quite dull and difficult to follow, probably just because I'm not smart enough. He often asks you to imagine a sphere 8 light years across. I've never actually finished the book, and I can't comment on the ending. It's like a collection of scientific discussions interspersed with personal stories and discussions about hypothetical extraterrestrial civilizations. The Sun Shines Bright, this is a comment by another user. The Sun Shines Bright is a collection of essays Asimov wrote for the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. He wrote these essays on a monthly basis for something like 30 years and was given free rein to write whatever he wanted, often a blend of science and history. He'd release them in book form every 17 essays, after every 17 essays, so the range of topics could be all over the place, without many connections between essays. Some topics were just bizarre. That's what Jack0808 said. I haven't actually read a lot of Asimov, but the other book that I did read of his was The Gods Themselves. And at the beginning of the book, there's the quotation, against stupidity, the gods themselves contend in vain, which is one of my favorite quotes. And a lot of my podcast episodes are about stupidity. And there's a great video essay called The 5 Laws of Stupidity, which you should really watch. Also, the book Flowers for Algernon, which is about a guy who's stupid and scientists experiment on him until he gets smart, sort of like that Sunny in Philadelphia episode with Charlie, which is based on that book. And the subject of intelligence is interesting, and Isaac Asimov was a very intelligent person, so I think if he understood the contention with stupidity, if anyone understood it, he did. But the book, The Gods Themselves, is very interesting because it's about an alternate reality that's linked to Earth, and they're siphoning energy through decaying radioactive isotopes. I think it's tungsten or something. But the process that they're using, and it's called like a universe pump. It's basically like an advanced form of energy generation using interdimensional siphoning of energy. So you're basically siphoning energy from another universe. But the humans discover that it's destroying the universe. So I don't want to ruin it too much, but I mean, you're not going to read it. The aliens on the other side can't do shit about it, basically. But because it's out of their hands, they're like revolutionaries. They're not the authorities. But the aliens have a very interesting society where there's 3 different genders, and this is a bit insane, I suppose, but the 3 genders line up perfectly with the three modes of the zodiac, being mutable, fixed, and cardinal. And I want to get. I think the sexes are rational, emotional, and parental. I'm just going to look it up quick. Yes, so I got it dead right. It's rationals, emotionals, and parentals. Rationals are logical and scientific sex, identified with masculine pronouns and producing a form of sperm. It's very outdated stuff, but just bear with me. Emotional or mids. So the rationals are called lefts, and emotionals are mids. They are intuitive, identified with feminine pronouns, and provide energy needed for reproduction. Parentals bear and raise the offspring and are identified with masculine pronouns. Parentals have almost no ability to blend their bodies with others. Very weird things about the book, like these beings can like pass through physical objects. There's no physical objects in their universe. They can all pass through each other, and the way that they masturbate is by moving through solid objects. I suppose they are solid objects, but I just remember that as a very bizarre part of the book. Like he talks about the way that they masturbate, because there's three genders, so I suppose he's interested in the way that they reproduce. But what interested me, or what I noticed, was how these things align with the three modes of the zodiac, being fixed, mutable, and cardinal. And I think parentals are cardinal, emotionals are mutable, and the rationals are fixed. The fixed signs are also known as the prophets, and you will see those represented a lot in Christian artwork in the form of the ox, the man, the lion, and the eagle / scorpion, because Scorpio is also sometimes represented as an eagle. But I like to think that Isaac Asimov often wrote things that he thought were real into his science fiction stories. Not 100% real, but more like speculations on the universe. I mean, the book is called The Gods Themselves, and it's about these alternate dimension beings who are more technologically advanced, siphoning energy from our universe. And they are the gods themselves that he's referring to, these otherworldly beings. But I have a strong kinship with Asimov because I got many physics prizes at school, as well as the creative writing prize. So I have the scientific and creative writing sides to me, although I've never had as much success as he did, and I surely haven't been as prolific or as successful in my writing. In fact, I haven't written anything, except this one essay on Reddit that got like 20 upvotes. There's another essay that I wrote about molluscophobia, but anyway, I'm straying from the point. The point that I'm making is I've also had theories or ideas about the universe that would never pass through the academic system. As I've already shown, I'm very interested in astrology, and I did my own self-study on it. And the conclusions that I came to was that it's definitely real, not horoscopes, obviously, but the fact that people's personalities are affected by the day of their birth. And I went into a bit of a rabbit hole because I looked up people who were born on my birthday, and they had exactly the same fascination that I have with astrology, and it's a very like self-recursive thing that I'm not going to go into more depth now. But I've also have a theory about how people harmonize with each other, and it's based on waveforms, as everything can be represented by a waveform, and waveforms either form constructive or destructive interference, which is also known sometimes as harmony. It's how our brains recognize the constructive interference when it forms perfect ratios. So it's all physical and scientific, and the fact that our body has these cycles, it has many different cycles of varying wavelengths. It just stands to reason that these waveforms are going to harmonize with other waveforms. It has to happen because all waveforms harmonize. They all form constructive interference. And if you look at the birthdays of like the Beatles, they form a perfect major chord if you just use music notation overlaid over the zodiac, because there's 12 zodiac signs and there's 12 musical notes. And there's also 12 spheres kissing a central sphere, which is a mathematical problem that Isaac Newton won a prize for solving. It's about stacking spheres. When you stack spheres together, like if you take coins and you put them on a table, you'll have one coin in the center and 6 on the outside if all the coins are the same size. Now, if you do the same thing with spheres, you'll have 13 spheres, 1 in the center and 12 touching on all sides. Now, if the structure of the universe is 3-dimensional, which I know some people will argue against, but I mean, our intuitive understanding of the universe is 3-dimensional. Then, and if our galaxy or if our universe is spherical, then there would be 12 universes kissing ours, well, or adjacent to ours, like our neighbor universes. And I think that's everything that I want to cover in that. I'm not going to go any further into it because there's no point in drawing conclusions from these facts. You just notice them as facts. If you want to draw conclusions from them, you're going to end up lying to yourself, because we can never understand the truth, which is why Isaac Asimov lays out the facts. He points out these correlations, but he doesn't draw any conclusions from them. He just leaves it up to you, and you shouldn't draw any conclusions from them either. You should recognize them as interesting coincidences, interesting facts, and nothing more. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I love you. Goodbye.